Good evening, race fans. Welcome back to the CiL, the Collegiate iRacing League, here on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook now, bringing you the college action out here on track. Tonight, we visit the Hockenheim Ring, one of the newer tracks to the iRacing circuit, and definitely one of the newer ones, the CiL. Joining me up in the booth, as always, Josh and John. John, it's set to be a good one tonight.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to this one in a major way. We've got Hockenheim Ring down in the Rhine Valley near Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Lovely place, fantastic track. The host of the Formula Student Germany competition, where we see some of the fastest student-built race cars, and now we're about to see some of the fastest student-driven virtual race cars here on track. So, track with plenty of history, Josh, and it's changed quite a bit over the years. Actually, I think in 2002 it shortened from about 4.2 miles down to the current circuit that we know, which is about 2.8 miles and 16 turns, and a lot of tricky turns, not too much elevation here, but guys have still quite the challenge in front of them.
Yeah, I think so, and I did have an opportunity to be part of two of those Formula Student Germany competitions. It's a neat facility, it's a neat track. You can see here Sector 3, very tight, and you have to be very careful with the car as you take that left curb, or that right curb, then this right-hander, and right there inside of the Mount St. Mary's machine, maybe trying to pit in the final right-hander there. These guys are wrapping up their qualifying, but yeah, this is a tricky track. It's got one of the longest stretches, not a straightaway, but it is a long curved section right here into one of the slowest, tightest hairpins in iRacing, I think, John.
Yeah, I mean, that hairpin didn't used to be there before 2002. You used to just carry straight on down into the forest. If you go on Google Maps and satellite view, you can kind of get an idea of where the old layout ran, one of the highest speed tracks on the Formula One calendar, which is part of the reason why they changed it, partly safety reasons, car reliability reasons, and so on and so forth. But right now, students are out there in qualifying, getting ready for this race, trying to get their way towards the front of the pack. Right now, Sean Campbell is sitting at the top of the leaderboard with a absolutely monster time of a 36.9. I was wondering if we're going to get into the 36s in qualifying. We saw a lot of 37s in practice, and maybe just a couple 36s, but that's a pretty stout time there from the Randolph College machine. Avery Walker for the alumni currently sitting in second place on the grid. So we've got student and alumni cars out there at the moment. Say the alumni qualified in the first 10 minutes of qualifying. The students have this second 10 minutes. So now we're looking at the FIU machine, the Sean Campbell machine, Randolph College just in front of them, maybe trying to pick up a toe off the back of that Ford GT. I think he might be the only Ford GT in the field as I quickly check my second monitor, and I think, yeah, that is the only one. Couple of Audis in the field, a lot of Porsches in this field, a lot of German representation here tonight, Josh.
Yeah, and it would be the right country. We have the single Ford. I know that St. Louis University typically in the Ford, but went to the Audi tonight, a car that rotates. Yeah, and I think that machine will forego this lap. Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how Sean gets on. We know that he likes to experiment, play with it. He did say before that a little bit like a trampoline over the covers, doesn't have quite the same damping capabilities as some of these other cars. And so over these curves, especially right here where you see that's going to have an opportunity to upset the chassis as he goes through those sectors.
Yeah, and we're riding on board with now for just a moment there on board that Porsche with Andrew Williams. And it's, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very, very flat track. And it's one of the more technical tracks that I think that is actually without elevation change. Turn one that we see right here, just about keeping it in bounds, is Luis Diaz for FIU. Turn one's an especially tricky corner, very high speed, and then hard braking down into turn two right there. This is the exit of turn three, actually, as these guys get whipped around and then back out onto that long straightaway that you had just mentioned. So definitely a tricky course, and one of my personal favorites, actually. I absolutely love running this course. I remember back in my Forza 3 and Forza 4 days running this when I was a teenager in high school, and then on to iRacing now, as we see here. So you might notice the screen's looking a little bit different, had some technical difficulties earlier, but we'll get it figured out eventually here, maybe come back later and address that. But either way, Clemson machine getting rolled out there now. Alexander Clank popping it up in the third at the moment. Clank didn't have a lot of practice coming into this, Josh, so that's a pretty stout time for a guy that is going to be on the back foot here tonight.
Yeah, it is, riding there with good avoidance there, riding on board. We're on board with Thomas Toomey in that McLaren. University of Virginia going through the first sector now. That's going to be that long, tight right-hander into the left. And John, you can get a lot of speed through there if you come out straight. But I find that because it's a little bit of a decreasing apex, or maybe a tight apex at first, then you come off the back side of that curb, is a better way to say that on that first turn. It's a little bit tricky to get right.
Yeah, and you can do some things with car setup to help mitigate that. A little bit of damper tuning, definitely on the high-speed side. You can help the car settle over those bumps, and not every car is going to react the same way either. I know the Audis seem to be relatively good over the bumps, and I don't think the Ford does quite the same. I know some guys were talking about a trampoline effect that the Ford can have, but it certainly looks like that's not impeding Sean Campbell whatsoever. So this is coming through turn 8, turn 7 right here, and very tricky. You want to be very smooth on the throttle as you come in there, because you will have to come out of that throttle pretty aggressively before you turn right onto the straight that Andrew Burrell is traversing down at the moment. Then onto the tight right-hander. A lot of curb action going on. You can use a lot of curb in these cars, and you really should to optimize that lap. It looks like Thomas almost tried to send it down the inside in qualifying. He's trying to find some clean space, currently sitting in third for the Virginia machine. And a healthy qualifying might get held up a little bit by Andrew Burrell. And he's trying to make his own way around, so he's going to make some space for Thomas to make his way around and take another lap. Hopefully he's got enough fuel to get one more lap done. We've got about 2 minutes left, so no real time to pit and get more fuel in the car. This is going to be his last chance, I think, to set that time and try to snag pole. And I know that's what Thomas Toomey wants. He wants to be on that podium, Josh, and he's going to work for it.
He is going to work, and we've seen him work with the McLaren at a couple tracks, especially the Red Bull Ring, to get that car up front. He understands the car. He understands the setup. We know he understands the setup and driving. He's a name that we call out on a now weekly basis, and it's going to be exciting to see what he does here. You can see as he went through that first turn, almost sideways, getting that car rotated. We know it's a strength of the McLaren to get rotated and then almost plant that throttle and accelerate out of the corners. So going to be one to watch. Seeing now the Porsche of Austin DeLong, Pennsylvania College of Technology, going through the final sector and looking about 20th or so. He'll try to put down that final lap. These guys are all getting their final times in. You can see on the upper left of your screen, probably a little over a minute to go. So these guys coming to the white flag, if not the checkered flag, for their own qualifying sessions.
Yeah, indeed. And Sean Campbell's got a healthy points lead coming into here, just in front of his competitors. I'll pull up the road points very quickly here. So we've got Randolph College currently leading in points, 22 points back to Sean DeLandia for UCLA. I don't see Sean DeLandia's name actually on my screen at the moment, so I think he may be taking the opportunity to have this as his drop week. So out of the 6 races, your worst performance will get dropped, and those points will not have to count for you. And so it's just your best 5 performances that count. But Sean DeLandia not present here tonight. Thomas Toomey 40 points behind Sean Campbell for Virginia, is currently sitting P3 for that machine. Then FIU in 4th at the moment, 44 points off the leader, and then Kyle Bonin for Clemson in 5th. So Sean Campbell, healthy lead coming into this, and currently sitting on pole in this session, so it's looking good for a repeat. That would be 3 wins in a row if the Randolph team could pull it off here tonight. And you know, I don't want to say it too early, but it certainly could happen. I was trying to think of what my pick to win was going to be here tonight, Josh, and it's pretty hard to not pick Sean Campbell, especially when he's 5/10 in front of the rest of the field.
It is almost like picking Tom Brady. It's a little bit hard to go out on that limb. It's a very strong limb, but nonetheless, a very good pick. And we've seen that Randolph car have space, have speed, and we know that team. And Sean has the ability to put in the work during the week. We go to the grid here, and we'll bring that up. But I will sneak in my pick, Thomas Toomey in the McLaren. We mentioned him before. In the Virginia team, I think it's going to be the University of Virginia finally taking that McLaren to victory lane. We saw him practice this week, and John, I think that's what we're going to see tonight.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll run down that grid as they get paired up here on the backstretch. About to start here in just over a minute's time. So Sean Campbell going to lead this field away. That absolutely masterful time of a 36.8 in qualifying. Actually, Avery Walker going to join him on the outside for P2, and Parker Eaton in P3, Thomas Toomey P4, Alexander Clank in P5 for WPI. Kyle Bonin, the highest qualifying Clemson machine in the field, in P6. Jeremy Rogers, the second of the alumni, in P7. And then Christian Gomez in P8, Carl Lemkel in P9, and then Nick Daly in P10. Overall positions, of course, there's some alumni mixed in there as well. Then on to P11, Cohen Evans for IUPUI, Matthew Norberg in P12 for NC State, James Chastanet, another alumni in the field, in P13, Luis Manuel Diaz for FIU in 14th, Nathaniel Willey in 15th, Derek Ekmanis, another alumni in the field, 16th, Alexander Piccini in 17th, Thomas Crump in 18th, and then Miller Diageo, he's going to have to correct me on that one later, 19th starting on this grid. Esteban Munoz, another FIU car, in 20th. Austin DeLong in 21st. Andrew Williams in 22nd. Nicholas Patinella in 23rd. Jeremy Brox in 24th. Ricky Paz, a new name to the field, in 25th. Andrew Burrell in 26th. Christian Bryant Hill in 27th. And that is the field. 27 cars out there tonight. Actually make that 28. Scott Ratliff and Alex actually make that 29. Scott Ratliff and Alex Jensen. Alex not setting a lap in qualifying, nor was Scott Ratliff. So pretty big field here tonight. 29 cars in the field. Plenty of overtaking opportunities as well, Josh, down into turn 2, especially on the start of the race, and then down into turn 6, the big hairpin. What a huge opportunity for some of these guys to try to make some moves.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. Down to the hairpin, you're going to see the draft. I would actually expect to see the Ford with that horsepower. We know it's got some top end. I would expect to see it down there. I would also expect to see some passing kind of in that second sector, coming out and going into the third sector where there's a right and then a little bit of a short chute and then a kink. And this hairpin, you see all these cars right now, that's going to be a passing zone. So we're going to agree to go 2 by 2. Come into the green flag, a rolling start for these GT3 cars. You can see the iRacing Porsche machine will pull off to the side, and we are going to go green in about 2 seconds, guys.
Yeah, so we're coming onto the front straight. Sean Campbell waiting to pick his moment to go green, and there he goes, off to an early start here in the CIL round 3 on the road season. Going to swap over to the left-hand side, get that optimum line in. Guys jostling for position. A little bit of wiggle there back there with the BMW. Looked like that was a Clemson machine, might have gone off the road. A lot of guys running wide in turn 1. That's to be expected at the start of the race. Cars mostly making it through clean there. I'm not sure which BMW. I see it just back there in the background rejoining. Guys diving around the inside in here into turn 2, going side by side. That's the UTA machine and another Audi going side by side. That's going to be another alumni. And we've got big spinners here. Big accident coming out of turn 4 for a couple McLarens and a Porsche. I see that might be an NC State machine. As a couple other guys starting to make their way through here now, going 3 wide on the backstretch.
3 wide down into the hairpin. You saw that the first turn and first sector was very tricky as cars struggle for traction and everybody tries to find their braking point around their competitors. See 2 FIU machines. That's James Chastanet for FIU in the 240, and then number 9, Esteban Munoz. Derek McManus there for San Diego State University, leading the charge down in the second sector. It's that right-handed kink that'll be flat out and deep and hard on the brakes. Down here into the left, and then another little bit of curb. And it's so easy, John, right there to get on the throttle, over-rotate the car. But not these guys. They're back on track and heading down into the final leg of this Hockenheim Ring.
Yeah, very easy to over-rotate that car there, as you mentioned. We'll see how much curb these guys take. Look like a lot of curb for, I think that might be the IUPUI machine up there in front. That's Cohen Evans in that black and tan Porsche, closely followed up by Derek Ekmanis and Esteban Munoz. So a train of Porsches led by an Audi. A lot of German manufacturer representation in here at the moment, but is a Ford up front. Sean Campbell stretching out to an early lead right now, crossing the line just now with a 1.1 second lead over the rest of the field. So now we're looking back. That's Carl Lemke in that front blue and yellow Porsche, closely followed up by Nick Daly for UTA in 7th at the moment. Nathaniel Willey having a great start, moving up to 8th as well. So that's 15th to 8th for Nathaniel. Great job at the opening lap. We got an overtake going on down here on IUPUI that looks like, I think that's Carl Lemke actually in the Audi just in front there. So excellent move executed there. The St. Louis machine looking good out there on track at the moment. And I got to find Jeremy Rogers' car at some point in here because he has an absolutely fantastic livery. And actually that car is showing on pit lane for the moment. He was one of the McLarens involved in one of those earlier incidents. I'm sad to report that McLaren looks to be out of this race with maybe terminal damage on that. They do have a fast repair, but I still see the hood off of that machine as Panther Esports is defending from IUPUI.
Yeah, IUPUI, going to look here. We see that these guys have gotten separated, so it looks like Esteban Munoz did complete the pass there on Cohen Evans. That was 4th position. These 2 student drivers there, you see Alexander Clank working through for Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Right there, San Diego State, trying to figure out how to get around that wide Audi of St. Louis University. And Carl Lemke, we know he's been fast actually took his rig to a hotel, helping crew for Ted Burns from the University of Wisconsin, doing some racing in Indy in the real world this week, and the 95 car down there in his hotel room, currently in VR, trying to make most of that low bandwidth connection. And guys, he's doing it, top 10 right now.
Yeah, what a commitment to the league and to racing. He's out there racing or working with Ted Burns, as you mentioned earlier, for that Formula Ford SCCA runoffs. There's Ted Burns there in the camera as well. Hello, Ted. Hope things are going well for you out there. Good luck in Formula Ford. Hope qualifying went well for you as well, as we ride on board with Carl down into turn 2. And then back on board with Derek Ekmanis, deep into the corner just behind Carl. A little bit late on the brakes. They're going to be slow off the corner and under attack from the cars behind. A Clemson machine making it around the outside, it looks like, although that might be lapped traffic actually giving way to Carl Lemke. I'm not entirely certain. And actually, Josh, I'll back up just a lap ago. Christian Gomez and Kyle Bonin are just in front of this pack, and they're having a heck of a battle right now down into turn 6, which is what we're approaching right now. Another car's going too wide on the apex. Not the greatest place to go too wide. You're going to lose a lot of speed if you do that and really have to check up, and that's just going to play straight into the hands of guys like Sean Campbell, Avery Walker, and Thomas Toomey as they lead this field 1, 2, 3 at the moment.
Yeah, they are. And the Clemson machine of Thomas Crump there you saw in the BMW has given way temporarily. And looks like actually Derek Manis falling behind the 17 there of Cohen Evans. So IUPUI moves up, grabs one more spot. Ekmanis right now scored 10th according to your screen. And then we talked about James Chastanet trying to hunt down fellow alumni. And that will be a battle that we pay attention to. So here in this corner, famously, Sebastian Vettel going off in the rain. No rain here today, but yeah, you see right here these guys following, and a little bit of grass there for the FIU machine. We'll see how that shakes out. But these cars, especially with their driver aids, it is a little bit tricky, John, to catch a different surface, whether it's some dirt or some grass, and it can affect these cars. It's hard to recover from.
Yeah, and so as you just mentioned, the bumps and the grass alike are going to upset these cars, as Alexander Clank definitely just ran wide there in turn 1. He's going to pick up an off-track penalty for that. 17 is the upper limit for these guys before they get a drive-through penalty of those. So we'll keep track of that throughout the night and see who keeps racking those up. The more aggressive drivers are obviously going to tend to rack up a few more, although Sean Campbell sort of mitigates that by just being fast and on track at all the same time. So I'm not sure how he managed that aggressive strategy, saves tires, and leads the race all at the same time. But I'm sure guys are going to watch this race back, go right on board with him, and just try to figure out what he's done there. So a bit of a Porsche train coming through turn 6, UTA in the background there as well, and a BMW, and then Carl Lemke. Big train, actually. A lot of single file action, not a lot of battling going on at the moment. The field's fairly well spread out at the time as we follow Alexander Clank at the moment through a turn that you don't really want to run too wide through. You can pick up an off track very easily, and it's going to compromise this turn. I think it's turn 11 or turn 10 as we come through here, and then you can take a lot of curb on the inside here. We'll see if anybody chooses to do it. Looks like the FIU machine, Christian Gomez, choosing to use a lot of curb there. Kyle Bonin in the Clemson machine not doing the same. He's going to have a little bit of miscommunication with the lap traffic. Andrew Burrell not giving quite as much space as Kyle was expecting at the moment, so that's going to play into the hands of Alexander Clank. Maybe he can stretch a lead here a little bit.
Yeah, and I wonder if he was a little bit spooked at the closing rate of his fellow Clemson car, the Porsche, at that point. Kyle Bonin, you see there back on the grass, but well held from Andrew Burrell. Yeah, it's Southern New Hampshire University right there. You mentioned Nathaniel Wiley having a really good run. A little bit of patience there through the first kink. John, that kink is so fast. There's really no too wide through it, and if you do, you lose a ton of time. Probably the smart move there. As he looks down the inside, he'll make the move. Just put a little bit of a block on, make sure he maintains that position and fall back in line. But guys, St. Louis University not far behind with a big toe here.
Yeah, big toe as they head down to turn 6. Big overtaking opportunity, as we mentioned early, as we head down there, riding on board with them at the moment. And yeah, you mentioned it. Turn 1 is an absolute killer for these guys. I remember Charles Leclerc in 2018 as well got that turn wrong and did a 360 at the German Grand Prix that year and managed to keep it on track somehow. A couple other guys running wide there as well. But yeah, so Nathaniel Wiley up there at the front doing a great job for that team. Carl Lemke close behind, and then Cohen Evans in that fantastic livery on the 17 Porsche following through at the moment into and yeah, this is a tricky corner. This is where you would just want to breathe off the gas, not take too much curve, and then gently breathe back on. Looks like UTA ran just a touch wide in that corner, and then you're going to be pretty early on the brakes and try to keep that apex speed up for the next set of corner and try to take as much curb as you can on the inside. Tires are going to be a factor here tonight. And the guys were mentioning a lot of tire wear issues, especially in the late runs as we go on board with the Panther Esports team. James Chastney, the alumni representative, looks like he's got a little bit of body damage on the left-hand side of that car from an earlier instant as we sweep through turns 13 and 14 into 15 now. Runs a little bit wide on the exit and the entrance to that corner. So that's going to cost him as he heads onto the straight here. Carl Lemkuhl has a car to defend from Cohen Evans behind, but remember, these guys are not fighting for the same points battle, Josh. The alumni and student points are separate, so while Carl might be, I think he's 9th on track at the moment, he is 3rd in the alumni standings, so he's looking to hold on to that position as much as he can and make some ground up.
Yeah, and the best thing that he can do for that St. Louis team is keep his position, stay in tow here, and see if he can work for some of these guys. You saw Nathaniel Wiley on your screen getting the job done and focused and calm behind the wheel of that BMW. And Cohen Evans, we've seen, has the pace. So these guys, nice little train working together. Now you see Nicholas Daly there. That would be the next alumni that St. Louis University is trying to track down. As you see a little bit of a wiggle from the Porsche there. That's San Diego State out of the hairpin.
Yeah, and that would be a first podium if UTA can hang on to that one outside of the pilot season. So let's watch for that and keep an eye on it. Back on with James Chastney in that FIO Porsche with the damage on the left-hand side, looking down to the inside a little bit and not going to make that move. So he's going to back out of that one for the time being. And a little bit of traffic, actually. The lap traffic is not doing a great job of getting out of the way, it looks like, tonight. And it's a struggle. You want to stay on track and keep the throttle planted, but when you've got fast cars coming up behind you, you have to obey the blue flags that is in the rule book. As two Clemson cars, it looks like, run wide. Andrew Williams was one of those 2 cars. It looked like another Porsche might have been involved there. So that was a corner that I think that's very likely to happen. So that was going into turn, I think that was turn 8, Josh. Maybe it was, no, that was turn 11. I stand corrected. So tricky corner, especially if you're trying to run too wide. Not a lot of grip on the outside, which is why I recommend using that curb on the inside. Kind of help turn the car, and then you just have to be patient with the throttle. Make sure you don't run too wide out over the curbs on that exit. But back with Carl Lemkuhl, closely following Nathaniel Wiley, Nick Daly, Alexander Clank, 4 seconds up the field from Carl at the moment. Alexander Clank in 6th. So Carl holding down 9th place at the moment. Good little 6 or 5 car pack battle at the moment, and as they head down into turn 6.
Yeah, it's fun to watch these guys as they get now a little bit spread out and into a rhythm. You can see 10 minutes down of the 60-minute race. And I'm going back, John, to the turn 11 incident there. It's a fast right-hander. You can do it too wide, but again, it costs a lot of speed. And we've said that a lot tonight. It costs a lot of speed to go too wide through some of these corners, and it is. That's why it's a little bit tricky. It's a very fun track to drive, to qualify, to practice and tune, but to race as well. But it can be difficult to pass, to run in traffic, to negotiate. Especially as you see those sausage curbs on the outside, not giving any forgiveness. As we go through these corners, yeah, it's hard to go too wide through here, through the hairpin, and through basically every corner. From the hairpin to the start-finish line is recommended single file. So it is tricky, and you do have to know your competitors and be a little bit patient and selective in how you choose to pick your battles.
Yeah, exactly the word I was going to use is choose those battles. And I think the guys that are a little bit wiser to this track and understand the nuances of it are going to pick those battles a little bit more carefully than others. I think practice is really making the difference here tonight. A lot of these guys, Sean Campbell, Avery Walker, Thomas Toomey, Kyle Bond, and they put in a lot of time to get prepped for this track because it is so technical. You have to have the perfect setup strategy, and you also have to mitigate the tire wear over the course of the stint. So a lot of guys spend a lot of time working on the setups for this track. It is very tricky to get a car that will handle adequately around the entire course the entire time and not overwear the front tires or the rears too much disproportionately. So we're watching Nathaniel Wiley now track down the UTA machine in front at the moment. UTA still hanging on to an overall 7th place for now. Sean Campbell with a 3.7 lead up at the front of the pack. That's about half a second a lap. We've seen Sean Campbell absolutely masterclass it last 2 weeks ago rather at the Red Bull Ring. He's going for 3. He's going to try to put this championship on ice before we even get the final race of the season, and that is not an easy task considering the level of talent in this field, Josh.
No, it's not. It's a big stacked field, and I think it speaks to Sean and Campbell's, or Sean Campbell and Randolph's ability to set that car up to be skilled and to be consistent. John, we've seen fast guys that can do that, but it's very hard to put 60 minutes together with a pit stop, and we've seen that he can do that. Looking now and wondering if this St. Louis machine is starting to get the better of this BMW as we go through that. St. Louis trying to get around Southern New Hampshire University. Yeah, a little bit right there, a wiggle from the BMW. So not sure if he's running a different engine map or actually maybe a contact. It looks like IUPUI going to look and go here. So we will have a little position change down into the corner. But these drivers are trying to negotiate each other. We talked about being selective. In fact, maybe a slowdown there. So ran a little bit wide, Southern New Hampshire did, and gathered a little bit of a slowdown right there. Back on board with Alexander Piccini and the University of Santa Maria Federal, trying to look outside Clemson, but maybe not that turn. And yes, even if you don't want to make the pass, get in your opponent's head a little bit. Just put that nose out there, put those headlights in his mirrors, and make him think twice about what line he's taking.
Yeah, it looks like some right front damage, maybe some right rear damage as well on Piccini's machine. And he's the only Ferrari in the field as the BMW behind. Thomas Crump is looking to make the move down here into turn 6. It's going to be a real late braking effort if he can get it done. Piccini also late on the brakes, carries a lot of speed in there, and I think he's going to be able to hold on to that and maintain that position off the exit. I was right on board with him at the moment. Going to sweep right and then hard brakes for turn 8, very tricky corner. You want to get it braked in a straight line. You don't want to have too much yaw on the car when you're braking for that corner, and then ease off the brakes, get gently onto the throttle, and then easy out of it as well. So we're watching Carl Lemke earlier, and Joshua, what popped in my head is it's a little bit of an unfair advantage for him. He's got a professional race engineer looking over his shoulder, telling him what to do and how to drive the car. That's got to be an unfair advantage in something like this, no?
I think that's got to be quite helpful. I've thought of a few times myself that I could use that. Certainly, we know that this mimics real life and reality fairly closely. We know that these cars have different characteristics, and we know that these drivers can work with these cars and mimic and bring that real life experience. Right? We've seen it here. We've seen drivers that are familiar with karting and even oval driving, both in the road and the oval side of CiL. And so we know that real life background can carry over into this arena. And I'm sure that I would like Ted Burns kind of looking over my shoulder, giving me pointers, checking my braking points. Just about anything.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about how this is the host to the Formula Student Germany event that you yourself have attended a couple times, which I'm only slightly jealous of, if anything, Josh. It must have been a fantastic event, I'm sure it was. But, outside of what those students do to build their FSAE cars and Formula Student cars, the tuning setups still apply in iRacing. So all the damper adjustments, spring adjustments, ride height, camber, caster, toe, wing angle adjustments, all of those adjustments still play into effect here in iRacing, and they are excruciatingly accurate, I might add, especially when you can compare it to a real-life car. And for anybody that's driven, maybe a Porsche Cup car, an MX-5 Cup car, anything in real life, and then gone into iRacing, it's pretty dang close, Josh. The adjustment characteristics and the characteristics of each track and how they pertain to the individual cars are extremely accurate. And so a lot of these guys use it to prep for maybe real-life racing as well. I know for a couple drivers I've worked with in the past, they'll use it for MX-5 Cup practice, especially given that car is one of the staples in iRacing and one of the cars that we like to use for some of the challenge races that we do in the off-season. But in the meantime, Piccini still trying to battle with Andrew Williams just in front, just half a second up the road. That Porsche looking good there through turn 15, taking a little bit of curb on the exit there, not quite extending all the way on the track on the exit. That's going to cost him a little bit of speed there. You see the cars in the background extending that track on exit, and that's really what you want to do there. That's going to maximize your speed on the apex and allow you to carry a lot more speed all the way through the corner, get back to the gas earlier, and etc. So Piccini now down into turn 2, hard on the brakes, getting it turned in, misses the apex just by a hair, and that's going to put him slightly on the back foot, Josh, down to turn 6.
Yeah, and that's not where you want to do that. We're going to see now following down into turn 6, looks like Mount St. Mary's. I'm sorry, it is the 012 machine going down the inside of Southern New Hampshire. And I recall, actually, that Lamborghini was previously in front of Southern New Hampshire and kind of that pack that we were watching. You see right there, Southern New Hampshire, again, that's Nathaniel Wiley under attack from what looks like Parker Eaton, actually, in the NC State machine. But, yeah, that's a little bit of a shuffle here looks like maybe an off track even for Nathaniel Wiley. So, John, we talked about there's going to be a little bit of tire wear. And I'll tell you what, John, in my experience, I tested the Audi, I tested the BMW, maybe a little bit of move, but a dummy there. I found that the BMW specifically had so much torque out of some of these corners that I was not able to control it. And I did get a little bit out of shape on the exit. And I wonder if Nathaniel is having that same experience.
You know, that's a very good question. I haven't driven the BMW in some time, especially not with the new tire model that's on the GT3s as of a few weeks ago. But I will tell you that I also tried the Audi out, and I found it very nice to drive. Great rotation mid-apex, very predictable under brakes. And you could really play with the setup in that car and run a pretty low wing angle and still get it to plant well coming out of the corner. So no surprise that up in second right now is an Audi with Avery Walker behind the wheels, maintaining that 3.5 second gap actually up front to Sean Campbell. So Sean not quite extending that lead quite so much as we saw him do at Red Bull Ring 2 weeks ago. But right now we're watching Nicholas Patinella make his way through turn 1 in the Robert Morris University machine. Lovely paint scheme on the side of that car with a big CiL logo on the back end of that car. Love to see it. And then FIU on FIU action as we head down to turn 6. We'll see here if James Chassenay just tucks in behind, not quite alongside enough to make a move into turn 6, and probably not trying to as well. I imagine that FIU team has got pretty tight communications between all their drivers and don't want those alumni battling too much with the students unless there is a massive pace differential. And speaking of FIU, the leading FIU car right now is going to be Christian Gomez. He's running in 3rd for the students, 4th overall. That would be another podium for the FIU machine if he can hang on to that position at the end of the night, but he's got Clemson to deal with behind, and Clemson also trying for that first podium of the season.
Yeah, when we talk about consistency, and you see it there in Christian Gomez for FIU, consistency in John setting up these cars, in organizing that team, and heading up the Florida International University, really sim racing expert for Panther Esports. And then here we see him on track, leading the charge, leading by example. So very exciting to see that. Speaking of leading, I had another fond memory of Hockenheim as we see a Porsche a little bit out of shape. Actually, 2 Clemson machines here. So 2 FIU machines, 2 Clemson machines. But John, I'm going to step aside and remind you that Hockenheim was the home of the inaugural Global Endurance Series race, 24-hour race, and that CiL as a group was successful there. So the CiL LMP2 car taking victory. So that's drivers that you see on the track right now coming together, fielding an LMP2 car and taking it to P1 at the end of 24 hours of racing. And John, it was a stretch, but we did it.
Yeah, it was certainly a stretch indeed. You and I both drove in that event. Thomas Toomey driving with us as well. And a couple other names throughout the field, Clank, Lemcool. I think Parker Eaton may have driven there as well. So a lot of these guys getting some seat time in before the season even started on that one. And yeah, that LMP2 was another level of animal around here, especially with the mixed level of traffic. You had the GTE traffic. Luckily, no LMP1s in the split that this team ran in. But either way, it's going to absolutely help these guys. Every little bit of practice on this track counts, and it doesn't matter if it's in a different car. You will still learn things. You may learn some other pieces of information that you don't see in the GT3 cars by driving the LMP2. You know, it's one of my favorite things to do is drive a slower car in the track first and then drive a faster car. And that's going to help you to learn where some of the nitpicky points are around the circuit. And actually, Andrew Williams taking a lot of curve there on the inside. Surprised to see that. Didn't really upset the Porsche too bad. I'm quite surprised by that, but I would have expected him to be able to carry a little bit more speed in if he stayed off that curve there. And he's not quite running it out all the way to the exit there. Got a Lamborghini on the inside there that's going to give way to him as they head through turn 16 and onto the main straight. But James Chassenay up front there in the Porsche. We'll see how he managed to clip that apex. The machine of Andrew Williams handles it just fine. No issues there whatsoever, and manages to keep it inbound. Looks like these Porsches are getting a little bit of a wiggle off of some corners, though. I think we saw it in turn 6, maybe even out on the exit of turn 4 as Williams runs just a little bit wide there through 2, 3, and 4. And then this is, you know, they call this turn 5. It is technically a corner, but most guys don't really consider things corners unless you have to lift or brake for it. And this is absolutely flat out. Huge drafting opportunity. We see Miller looking for the inside line here onto turn 6, going to send it late on the brakes, a little bit of apex speed loss there, but able to keep it under wraps. I think he may be challenged, though, as we exit turn 6 down into turn 7. Williams is going to look to the inside. You can make this move happen here. I think he lost the space, lost the gap, backed out of it. Wise move, trying to live for another day.
Yeah, I would have to agree there. That's the that Lamborghini there is driven by Myler de Arroyo. That's the BYU entry. So Brigham Young, the alumni, making an appearance here. And guys, over the last let's see, 2 races and now 3 has quietly been stepping up and has been on that podium a couple times for the alumni. And actually you'd say that down in 15th would be one of the slower performances. So we've come to expect a little bit of pace and quiet confidence from that Lamborghini, that 12 machine. But I'll tell you what, John, I'm going to take a note. We mentioned the CiL effort here at Hockenheim, but across that whole season, it would not be a surprise to see that Sean Campbell, let's not forget our leader, spends a lot of time with Neon Racing, even a little partnership there on his Ford as he leads this race. Winners of the 6-race season for those endurance races. So a lot of pace there. Sean Campbell, along with drivers we've also known, Max Bui, as well as Michael Koholich and others. Right, not surprising that that pace has carried over to this event.
Yeah, the entire Neon Racing team is full of talent, top to bottom. Michael Koholich and Max Bui, excellent racers in their own right, and Sean Campbell representing that team well out there on the field, as well as representing Randolph College, as we see a Lamborghini again slotting it up the inside and slightly shuffling out. Was that a Panther Esports machine? That might be James Chastanet getting shuffled outside at turn 6, not going to be able to hang on to that position as they sweep through turn 7 and into turn 8. A little bit of shuffling around in the background, but now single file for number 240 machine. Running a little bit wide. You want to stay pretty tight, actually, off that corner because it's going to set up this next exit and reduce the amount of lift that you have to make through turn 10, and then ultimately allow you to carry a lot more speed towards turn 11. So some interesting line choices I'm seeing here tonight. We noted that there was a range of practice experience on this track, and I think we're seeing some of that. Some of these guys might still be trying out new lines throughout the race, and it's something that you can do. It's an hour-long race. There's plenty of time to go, but Josh, we're nearing the halfway point, 28 minutes in, about 10 minutes out from what's probably going to be the pit window, I would guess.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to think about their pit window, and they won't take tires, but they'll be measuring that tire wear at that point. And I think that, especially on Hockenheim here, we are using a lot of fuel in the first sector, and it'll be 35 minutes into the race, 45 minutes. Will be exciting to see who saves fuel, right? I think back to our opening Daytona race, where we were incorrect about 3 laps in a row on when we thought that that Sean Campbell from Randolph would come on down. So yeah, that'll be good to see. I know that these guys are doing the calculations in their head. Crew chiefs are doing calculations, alongside. I'm sure St. Louis University there and Ted Burns are trying to crack that calculator there in the hotel room as we go pretty closely into the hairpin. Clemson, a little bit of a Clemson sandwich and 2 FIU cars. That's going to be your James Chastanet, and then Clemson. And then looks like Luis Manuel Diaz. Luis Diaz going through and trying to get these guys. In fact, Clemson behind. So 2v2, if you will, here for Clemson and FIU. Guys, they're pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, pretty evenly matched indeed. Nobody able to quite get the upper hand as we come through the back section of Hockenheim right now into turn 11. And yeah, this Clemson machine for Andrew Williams, it's had pretty good pace, I'd say, throughout the season, just not quite able to capitalize on the opportunities that get presented to him. So we'll keep an eye on those FIU machines for James Chastanet and Luis Diaz and see if they present any other opportunities. But at the halfway point in the race right now, Josh, we've got Sean Campbell still leading 3.7 seconds up. That gap had just actually a moment ago closed down to about 3.2. So Avery doing a really good job of staying in touch with Campbell up at the front there. So great show for the alumni here as well. Thomas Toomey sitting in third right now, 5 seconds off the lead. Christian Gomez in third in the students, but fourth overall, 6 seconds off the lead. Kyle Bonin in fifth. Alexander Clank in sixth. Nick Daly in seventh. Cohen Evans in eighth. Carl Lemkel in ninth. Derek Ekmanis in 10th. And then Parker Eaton, the NC State machine, in 11th right now after starting in third. So I think he was one of those cars that got caught up in one of those early instances, Josh. And so I might go back later and check and see exactly what happened to him. But he had plenty of pace, actually. He had a pretty good qualifying time to put it up there in third. But now Sean Campbell, just as I say, oh no, that gap is actually closed back down. I was looking at the wrong monitor for a moment. So Sean's lap times have actually been degrading a little bit over the last few laps. He ran lap of the race on lap 2 at 37.8, and now he is back into the 39s, 39.2 on lap 15. So the tires really starting to wear on these cars, Josh.
They are, and I tell you, you mentioned that the Ford was starting to talk about it. And he said, I think the Ford is going to be quick, but tires are something I'm going to have to watch. But I'll tell you what else, Avery Walker and Thomas Toomey, two Cavaliers, and I'll tell you who has come to life in Season 3 is the University of Virginia. If anybody is going to have something to say about either of these championships, Avery Walker recently graduated. Just last season was wearing that green banner, but now an alumni, and Thomas Toomey, an alumni there with a new rig. So his pedal is not flexing. There in his dorm room, he's going to try and have something to say about this championship. And these two drivers are really solid and representing Virginia quite well. John, I almost forgot. I did notice that probably a story is Thomas Toomey's telemetry. And he said, man, I don't know that I'm hitting the brake like that. And he said, oh, my rig is flexing. So he applied pressure to the brake pedal, and then he had to compensate for a little bit of give. So new rig this week, I believe, and we've seen it in pictures. Looks pretty sharp. And John, I think it's working for him currently.
Yeah, I think he went with that 80-20 aluminum extrusion rig, really solid rig to use when you need a solid mounting for the pedals. And that's one of the critical things, really. I remember back in like the old PS2 days of trying to hit the brake pedal and sliding across the floor, and then all of a sudden you had no brakes and no throttle coming out of the next corner. Those were some days back there, Gran Turismo 3, to date myself a little bit there. But yeah, got a variety of rigs that we see set up, all the way from Carl when he's at his home place with his motion rig. I'd be very surprised if he brought his motion rig all the way to Indianapolis with him, but impressive no less to bring a rig at all. And then some guys running single screens, some guys running triple screens, some guys running VR even. I know, Josh, you yourself like the VR. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the advantages that you think VR might add to this over a single or triple screen setup.
Sure. I mean, VR provides a lot more immersion, and the technology is such that terms you'll hear like screen door effect and resolution have really been updated recently. And so it's quite nice to look around. If you're an open wheel car, you look right over your front tires. If you're in a car like this, sports car, you're able to kind of feel the car. You're able to see the lights and the cars around you and hear the cars around you. And there is some spatial awareness as you turn your head, both with the visuals and with audio. So there is a lot of merit. Sure, it takes a little bit of a strong computer to really get the frames and get the graphical detail you want. There are trade-offs in any decision, and but VR, I think, has allowed some of these guys, and especially it's compact, right? We talk about single monitors and visibility, and the visibility is there with triples. As FIU looks to make, it looks like Clemson, a little bit of a defend from the 23 machine going down into this corner. Will he be able to hang on the inside? And I'll tell you who is there is Luis Diaz looking to pounce. James Chastany a bit wide, and it's going to be was just a defend, but now a stronger advantage for that 23 machine.
Yeah, Andrew Williams right now, 40 seconds off the lead is this group here on your screen. So getting caught up in these battles have cost a lot of cars quite a bit of time. Sean Campbell, Avery Walker, Thomas Toomey, they stayed pretty clean on those opening 5 laps, which really helped them to gain an advantage. And actually, I just watched Sean Campbell run a little bit wide in turn 1 on my screen, so I think he's starting to feel the pressure from those tires, probably starting to think about that pit stop right about now. Not necessarily going to take tires in that pit stop, but just get a fresh set of fuel on board that Ford machine. The only Ford in the field, even, and somehow it is managing to lead. I know all the Porsche manufacturers aren't quite looking for that result either, but we've got a train of Porsches followed up by a couple BMWs, I think, watching right now. So James Chastany running a little bit wide there at T6, you noted. And that's very easy to do when you're trying to defend. You want to be really late on the brakes. There's not a lot of grip around the outside. The track isn't quite rubbered in there. And then once you do run wide, there's a big red turtle curb there on the outside. It's really hard to come back over top that curb without the traction control kicking in and absolutely killing the exit speed. So trouble at turn 6 for James Chastany on that previous lap. Looks like he's all got it gathered up now, heading through turn 3, 4, and 5. And trying to stick on the tail of his teammate, his student teammate, as it were. James Chastany himself being an alumni, trying to stick on the tail of that number 28 machine, heading down there into turn 6. Andrew Williams, though, coming out on top in that battle of 4 cars at the moment.
Yeah, and putting just a little bit of distance between those two cars. So at the 30-minute mark, well, no more distance now as we get all bunched up in the corner and coming off the corner a little bit shallow. Not sure if Williams intended to do that, but we're all back under a blanket now. Was going to say 30 minutes in. Starting to see a couple takers down pit road, but nothing too special as we stay 3 in a row here. These guys are going to contend. And John, you start to wonder, do you think about doing something with pit strategy? And do you try and do something, if you have 2 FIU cars together, one student and alumni, so not for position, but can you do something with that opportunity, and can you put one of your drivers ahead of these Clemson drivers?
That's a good question. I think it's possible if they've been working together enough, and one of them may have saved up a little bit of fuel at some point, and it's very possible that some strategy could come into play here. And my second question is, could Avery Walker and Thomas Toomey do the same thing? As we see Penn College turned on the front stretch, I'm going to guess exactly what happened there. He came out of turn 16 a little bit too hot, took a little bit too much exit curb, and then wound up with a over-rotating car as he came off it and then spun across. So I'm pretty sure as we get a new fancy banner up there at the top, so we see all the cars in the order as Panther Esports runs a little bit wide there. Luis Diaz not quite getting the brakes locked down into turn 2. Very easy to do, but it costs you so much speed as you come on this backstretch. So you see the gap to Andrew Williams in front has now just opened up significantly, and it's not really going to be able to challenge down to turn 6. If anything, he's under fire from his alumni teammate just behind. But just further up in front, Josh, I want to quickly highlight that gap at the front, which was previously, about 3.5 seconds, has now closed down. We're looking at Thomas Toomey now. He is about 3.5 seconds behind Sean Campbell, which was previously the gap from Campbell to second, and Thomas himself being in third. So Virginia in second and third, alumni and student looking really good up there right now, and Christian Gomez about 4.4 off. So Sean not quite running away with it right now as he would have liked to. I think the Ford might be slightly hurting him in some areas as those tires wear.
Yeah, that could be true. And I'll tell you what, I was talking about the University of Virginia, but I'm going to say that FIU is right there, guys. This battle for second, as far as I'm concerned, is a 3-car race, and almost 3.5, because you saw the Porsche there of Kyle Bonin, the 26 machine. The Clemson University. Guys, everywhere we go on this track, there's a Clemson car. A big, strong entry, and we love to see it from those guys. But Clemson University doing quite well, actually, and going to be a part of this group sooner rather than later. But we're going to rejoin now and see. Looks like Clemson, Andrew Williams for Clemson, still ahead of FIU as they go on those rumble strips. John, it's so easy to get on those and bounce. And once you do bounce across those strips, you bounce even further out. You can pick up an off-track or a slowdown.
Yeah, and the slowdown penalty will really occur mostly when you cut the corner or if you really extend way too far to the outside. And so what that's going to do in iRacing is just pop a little message on your screen saying, hey, you got to give back about 1.5 seconds in the next 45 seconds. So you just got to lift out of the throttle, and that generally means losing a position when you've got battles as close as this. FIU on FIU action down there at turn 6, actually. Those guys were going side by side. So not a great look for FIU trying to battle it out at the moment. So right on board with Thomas Toomey trying to follow his Virginia teammate around the track and keeping in good touch with him. You can see just up the road from him with that onboard shot was not Carl Uncle, I'm sorry. That was Sean Campbell just up the road. As he goes through turn 1, you can just catch the tail end of that. So I'm hoping that Toomey could have saved a little bit of fuel following Avery Walker all this time. And what that's going to enable him to do, Josh, is just run a little bit deeper into the race and take on less fuel at the pit stop. And so what that's going to do is shorten his overall pit time and hopefully get him out in front of Avery Walker and right next to Sean Campbell. Avery's got nothing to lose in that. He's not fighting for overall points. He just wants to win the alumni championship. So there's nothing for him to lose by letting Thomas Toomey have the space in front of him. So I could see no other reason why Toomey would stick behind that car if it wasn't to save fuel.
Yeah, John, I think you beat me to it. They know the pace in that Ford, and so they're going through. And yeah, that's a total opportunity to save fuel. We've seen how important fuel saving is, and we talk about say a 2 or 3 second gap has been kind of the distance from first to second this race. Well, taking on a gallon of fuel is 5/10 or 7/10 right there, and time is time. So exactly the key to what these guys need to do is work together as much as they can and sort this out to where they can put that McLaren that you see from the University of Virginia as close or ahead of that forward from Randolph, because guys on pace alone, it's going to be pretty difficult to get around.
Yeah, and that gap continues to drop up there. It's now a 3-second gap to the leader, and actually just under it dipped on my SDK monitor there for a second. So it's hovering right around that 3-second mark. So Toomey and Avery are working together beautifully right now. These teammates are communicating very well, and Christian Gomez just trying to stay in touch, going to try to pick up any opportunities where he can. And he's probably trying to save some fuel as we see the spits of flame out the back of the McLaren. Absolutely love that. I think it's the only car in the field that does that. I wish a few more did. I love the look of that. But yeah, these Virginia guys know what's at stake here, and they're driving extremely well right now. And getting pretty dang close to these pit stops. It's 41 minutes in, 41 minutes elapsed on the clock, 24 laps in, and at just under, I guess, a gallon per lap. These guys have got to be running on fumes or pretty close to it at this point. So keep your eyes open for cars diving into the pits. We will do our best to keep you updated with who has and has not pitted as we head into these pit stop phases.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough to come down. In fact, you can see there, it looks like a car just going to get out of the way, blue flag, let these leaders pass on by. That might be an FIU machine there. And these three getting a little bit spread out. But I agree, John, that pit stops are going to be coming up for these guys. We're going to see when that Randolph machine comes down pit road and how much fuel that machine takes. And then furthermore, for your second place or third place runner, depending on how you score that McLaren, is who we're going to watch and see how much fuel to take. And then, guys, I bet you that Christian Gomez has had an opportunity to save a little bit. If he's really been in draft in the toe of these cars in front, especially on that long stretch, I don't know if he would have saved as much as this Virginia machine on your screen. But, you see right there, looks like Avery Walker will be the first, and Christian Gomez. So notes there that Avery Walker and Christian Gomez to pit road this time by, guys.
Yeah, we'll see where these guys flesh out back into the pack after they finish this stop. But Thomas Toomey and Sean Campbell staying out at the moment, a 2.7-second gap as they cross the line. So that gap has shrunk considerably. I wonder if Campbell's tires have worn a little bit more than the others because he's been out front. He has not had an opportunity to really save tires at any point in this course. He's just had to push the entire time. A lot of cars down the pit lane. Alexander Clank, it looks like that might be Williams, I think, on pit lane as well in the Clemson machine. It looks like a lot of Porsches, an entire slew of Porsche 911s, and we see, who is this coming out of the pit lane? Is this going to be Nick Patinella, I think, for RMU, and then NC State just in front of him, Parker Eaton hanging out around the outside. So cars coming off of pit lane now. Christian Gomez out of the box, and Avery Walker just in front of him out as well. It looks like Kyle Bonin was that Clemson machine I mistook for Andrew Williams just a moment ago, also coming out of the pits. And Kyle Bonin's had a really quiet but successful race, actually. He's been P4 in the student battle so far, P5 overall, and just really kept to himself most of the time. He was pretty far, and well, not super far, actually, pretty close to these guys in front, just trying to stay in touch. But now, after these pit stop phases, he's right there in the battle. I think he could snag a podium if something happens with these guys, Josh.
Well, I think so, and I'll also note that, like clockwork, the cars going in about the same ordering, but also just the same intervals that they are now at. So maybe FIU a little bit spread out, but yeah, you can see there is the first Virginia machine, and then you had the 65 car, and then James Chastanay also up in there. So no pit sequences yet from your two leaders that we'll keep an eye on, but I'll tell you who had set a really good stops was this P2, P3, 4, and 5 group. And you mentioned there Kyle Bonin getting it done for Clemson. So you're looking now at Christian Gomez going around the hairpin. A little bit tricky. You want to get out, just straighten the wheel out, and then turn it back left for some of those. Nathaniel Wiley there going to go into this tight left and then be very careful with that torque-filled BMW.
Yeah, and Josh, I'm going to have to correct you actually just a moment ago. Thomas Toomey did choose to come down the pit lane. Sean has not pitted yet, so still some fuel to go in that leading Ford machine. Thomas Toomey is coming out of the pit lane just now, and so we'll see where he feeds back out relative to these other guys as they fly past. I have not seen that car coming out of the pit lane yet, so I'm going to try to check in with him. He's actually going through turns 3 and 4 right now, so just missed him there. He'll be just up the road from these guys. You can see him in the Delta there on the bottom. So this is Sean Campbell right now, making his way past this Lamborghini lap traffic on the inside. He's got to come down the pit lane this time, Josh. There's no way he managed to save fuel again on this race to take the win. I'll be absolutely amazed if he did, or maybe I don't know if these guys just short fueled the cars leading into the race, and he just went with a fuel tank. But if he's going to pit, we'll see it just now. So I'll keep an eye on that on my own monitor and see if he does come down the pit lane. But it's going to be tough, man, for him to take another lap out there. But based on his speed coming down the straight, I think he's staying out another lap, man. This guy's just incredible, and he's gone through turn 1 again. Sean Campbell putting 2 laps on Thomas Toomey's pit stop lap. That's incredible.
Yeah, he is. I'm sure he's engaging some lift and coast. Looks like actually James Chastanet having a little bit of trouble on your screen there. Yeah, back to your leader. He's going to have no problem so far saving that fuel. And, it's easy when you have time, John, to just give it a little bit of lift and coast. Alex Jensen at Embry-Riddle University. Haven't said that name too much all night, but Alex Jensen running 14th for those guys. Embry-Riddle always putting on a strong showing in the number 45 machine. So the St. Louis machine, that's going to be 095. That's Carl Lemcool from the Indianapolis hotel room. And so all these guys are being pretty consistent, and a lot of names that we've seen are just fun to watch here. We got a little battle between San Diego State and NC State, and these two Porsches are going to try to battle it out. Maybe a little bit of run for NC State as we go down into that fast turn 1.
Yeah, Derek Ekmanis with plenty of experience around here from running that LMP2 at the... Oh, you're going to have to correct me. Was it WC? I forget what the endurance race official title was, but he's running around down the inside. If anything, is Parker Eaton on Derek Ekmanis. NC State getting it shoved in there into turn 2. Good move there. We'll see if he can hang on to it through turn 3 and 4 and down into turn 5 and 6, trying to break the toe as he headed down towards turn 6. Got a battle between a pair of McLarens as Thomas Toomey going on the inside of the Robert Morris machine, and this is back to that Porsche battle. NC State now on the inside, trying to take away that optimal line from the other car, and not going to quite catch the end of that battle, unfortunately, as iRacing chooses to cut away from it. And then Panther Esports, Christian Gomez right on the tail of Avery Walker. So Avery and Thomas have switched positions after that one. So actually, at the moment, it does not look like Sean Campbell has quite come down the pitch yet. The top 20 have all come through the pits, Josh, except for Sean Campbell. Still out there at the moment. I've got him on my screen right now. I think he's got to be running cheat codes or something, right, to keep that much fuel in the car and keep it out there. I don't know how that's possible at the moment.
Well, we know those Ford EcoBoost engines are good for their turbos and fuel mileage. I think this car was actually from an era where it had simply a V8 engine. They said, let's put the power down. But nonetheless, Sean Campbell making it work. And yeah, I'm sure he is engaging some tactics, rolling in the throttle, rolling through the center, and trying to make that work cleanly. We know he's smooth. We know he's patient there. And so that's going to be, the takeaway from every race. And the takeaway from this race was being calm and consistent, John.
Yeah, calm and consistent certainly wins these races. And if we get the chance to talk to Sean Campbell afterwards, which it's certainly looking like we will, you will hear exactly that in his voice. Very low amounts of excitement, but I'm sure plenty of adrenaline at the race start, if anything. But now he comes down pit lane on my screen, just bends it in there. He's got a 41.6 second gap to the car behind Thomas Toomey in second. So we'll see what happens here as they finish up the pit stops. I'll keep them open on my screen and keep y'all apprised of what's happening there with Sean Campbell and Thomas Toomey's battle as we watch the Panther Esports team following Avery Walker around once more out of turn 9, turn 10, and into turn 11. So this is just before the pit entrance. So Sean Campbell has not quite entered his pit box yet, and these guys are still single file back here. So Sean Campbell just hit the brakes and hit the pit stop. So we'll see how much time he spends in there at the moment. Still stationary as the time is working down here on the clock. Under 10 minutes to go. Just about lap 28 out of an anticipated 36. Sean, super short stop. Didn't have to put very much fuel in the tank at all. Is out of the box and has a huge lead, I might dare to say, as he exits the pit lane. He's going through and breaking to turn 2 right now. What a lead as Avery Walker just clears the turn 1 apex. And he's way up the road. What an optimal strategy that Sean Campbell's managed to come up with. He must have been doing a lot of lift and coast. There are a couple places around this lap that you can lift and coast quite a bit. We were doing it a lot in that endurance race, but turn 6 you can lift and coast, turn 2, turn 8, turn 11. I mean, there are some opportunities around the lap, Josh, to lift and coast and save some fuel, but to do that much, to save almost 3 laps worth of fuel over a guy that was following his teammate for most of the race and able to save fuel just by being in the draft, That's incredible. Hats off to Sean Campbell for that strategy. I think that may pay out at the end of this race with that 8-second gap now back to Thomas Toomey. But that being said, Thomas Toomey, no slouch in his own right, working a great race so far tonight, still in second.
Yeah, Thomas Toomey, if you had told me, that finishing second in every race this season would not be good enough, I would have had a strong argument. But, if drivers Sean Campbell and Randolph is making it look that way. And so there you are following on board with your leaders there, P2 and 3, your alumni leader, Avery Walker, going down in the third sector. This hairpin, tricky to get right, to get rotated. You can see a little bit of maybe an early exit for that Audi, but wrapped up and well held and back across the start-finish line. And John, I think that maybe the final few corners of the Hockenheim Ring here are maybe more of the technical sort that we come across in iRacing. It has a nice flow, but it also requires a lot of precision as you go through the elevation changes.
Yeah, you got to pick the right line through there, and if you get the first corner in that section wrong, it's probably going to cascade through the rest of those corners. So it's really critical to really hit your marks as you enter that section there, especially turn 12. It's going to set up that, especially the exit from turn 12, and being very careful when you get on the gas out of that. So I do have some pit stop time information, and Sean Campbell's total time on pit lane was 40.9 seconds, and Thomas Toomey did a 44-second pit stop. So Sean was able to save 4 seconds basically in the pit box alone. He spent 12 seconds in the pit box, and then 16 for Thomas Toomey. So massive strategy call from the Randolph Community College team up there. Watching Avery Walker now heading through into turn 8 as the time it is getting close to expiring. We've got about 8 minutes left on the clock. Last chance for a lot of these guys to start making these passes, and I'm expecting to see some aggressive moves from Christian Gomez at the time.
Yeah, I think so when the time comes, and we know that Gomez is a pretty measured driver, and so he'll make the wise decision when that time comes, should he get there going through. But right now he has to get to the bumper of that McLaren and get it all set up, and a little bit of a gap there to do so. So see if that'll happen. And going through these are your leaders, your top 5 going to be Sean Campbell, Randolph, the University of Virginia, and then Avery Walker for the University of Virginia. Christian Gomez at FIU and Kyle Bonin, Clemson University is your top 5 for this race. And guys, a name that we're happy to see up front, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, Alexander Clank going P6 right now, which is also top 5 for the students. John?
Yeah, great look for Clank and a good recovery as well. So Clank had a bit of a struggle and didn't get a chance to practice a lot into this track. And as we mentioned earlier, it's a track where practice really rewards you and can really help to shave down that lap time. So Clank, we saw him win his championship previously in the last season, and he knows what he's doing out there for sure, and he's putting that on display tonight. So a couple of FIU cars. FIU actually getting pretty close to that tail of that Virginia alumni machine. Virginia is going to try to hold up FIU as much as possible here because they are not fighting for that same position. To Avery Walker's an alumni, Christian Gomez is a student. It doesn't matter if Avery gets past for him, but what does matter is if Christian Gomez gets a chance to get up behind Thomas Toomey as we head into the closing stages here. So a little bit more strategy playing out here, and a bit of an alternate strategy. You know, we talk about interplay between the students as far as strategy, but we never really think about how the alumni and students interact as far as strategy. And so we're seeing it here tonight with Avery Walker working for Thomas Toomey a bit to help him keep and hang on to that second place. So as we follow Piccini and Clank now through turn 11, Piccini going to run wide there on the exit. Clank almost doing the same, avoiding that Mercedes there, the Clemson machine, on the other side of the corner. So good avoiding maneuvers from Clank, probably lifted out of the throttle. Clank's a wise old head. He knows how to drive that Porsche pretty well. Was a fan of the GTE Porsche, now driving the GT3R machine as well. So Piccini able to carry that damage on that car pretty well into this race. Right now, Piccini running in 19th, currently 1 lap down. Got quite a few cars. Everybody that is 18th and below is at least 1 lap down. Got a number of retirements in this race as well. Jeremy Brock, Scott Ratliff, and then Jeremy Rogers, unfortunately retiring 29 laps ago. So just after the start of the race. UTA looking good at the moment, hanging on to second place in the alumni standings. 7th on the track at the moment. Derek Ekmanis is the final podium position for the alumni and is 10th overall. Parker Eaton just in front of him. So Avery Walker looking good. He's got plenty of gap behind him. Nothing to worry about except for keeping Christian Gomez behind him. Josh?
Yeah, I think that's the best thing you can do as a teammate there in his position. You mentioned it. And I will go back to Myler de Arroyo for BYU. Put in a good performance for the alumni group at this race and this season. Coming down to it now, guys, about 8 minutes to go in your lower left of your screen. And, I've been watching the Audi, and I think this is the front-running Audi, and there's others in the field. John, I don't know if they're as forward as that group right there. But what is it about the Audi that suits it to this track? And you mentioned that you had maybe a newfound enjoyment of the car after the latest update. Walk us through that and what you really like about it, and what are the strengths of the Audi?
Yeah, absolutely. So before, the Audi had a tendency to really over-rotate and have some lift-off oversteer issues on the old tire model. And with this update, it really planted that car down. It rotates far more predictably, so you can carry a lot of speed in there on the brake, rewards a good amount of trail brake, keep the front end hooked up, and then plant the throttle out. So it had pretty much good traction, just a really good balanced package overall, and I felt that it really wasn't too disturbed by most of the bumps on this track, so you could take a lot of curb in a lot of places. Even if you managed to clip the turtle curb on the inside of corners like the one that we just passed there, it really didn't mind all that much, though it did cost you probably a little bit of speed. At least it wouldn't really throw the car way offline. So if you're trying to defend and have to take a little bit more curb than otherwise, then that car really helped to enable that. Maybe that's down to some of the damper settings that I was using. Man, I'm not sure. I'm a bit particular on my setups, Josh. I like a car that has a little bit of a loose tendency, but we see it right there. Still hooks up pretty well with that apex on 35 or 33 lap old tires right now on that Audi, so still keeping that Porsche behind it. We think the Porsche tends to eat its tires a little bit faster than some of the other cars in this field, and I think the Audi's probably somewhat more kind on its tires in comparison. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's just a really balanced package overall. So if you have a pretty smooth driving style and then just like to tune the car specifically to your liking, I think the Audi's going to suit you.
From the expert himself, there you have it. And the Audi was probably one of my more recent acquisitions on iRacing, and so always exciting to hear what people enjoy. And so a little bit of a close of the gap there from the 65 machine. And John, we know that Christian Gomez, is a racer. Does he try and do anything towards the end of this? Is he resigned to his position there as we look actually here at Embry-Riddle, kind of a close battle. And then back to the front here is Christian Gomez choosing that position there for race end?
That's a good question. He's got nothing really to gain by just being in front of Avery, except for maybe a chance at Thomas if Thomas makes a mistake, but unlikely with just over a minute and a half to go in this race. So I think Christian Gomez is pretty much locked down third position in the student battle at the moment, so no real reason to go for a desperate maneuver and try to make it around a car that's not going to gain you any points if you're in front of it at the end of the day, because Thomas Toomey has about a 3-second gap back to Gomez, so that's going to be pretty hard to close up here with what's probably only a lap to 2 laps left in this race, as we see Embry-Riddle, St. Louis University, and Andrew Williams of Clemson getting involved in a little bit of a tussle here. So Andrew Williams and Alex Jensen are for position. 13th and 14th position we're battling over here. Carl, the other Audi in the field, as you just mentioned, these guys are trying to battle for a little bit of damage maybe on the left-hand side of that Mercedes, a little bit of a crinkle of the fender. Shouldn't hurt them too bad as they head through turn 1. Runs a little bit wide. That is going to be an off track for both Alex and Carl. I've said it a million times, I think, over the seasons, Josh, but I think I said spinning in sympathy, but that just works just as well when you're trying to follow that car in front. You're really focused on that bumper. You're probably going to do a lot of what he does. So if the car in front runs wide, there's a very good chance the car in back runs wide. So I think that's just what we saw from Carl, but as I quickly check, it doesn't look like anybody is at risk of running over that 17 instant limit, at least not within the top 20. Looks like Sean Campbell has about 9 instants right now. Thomas Toomey with 6. And then Avery Walker actually with only 2 instants. A really good job for Avery Walker keeping that car on track. And I think that Mercedes has somewhat fallen out of favor, Josh. It used to be the car of choice for Alexander Clank right when we made the switch to the GT3 cars. But really, Alex, I think, is one of the few people that have maintained that car.
Yeah, and it is difficult to get solidified in these cars. Choose one, and then the Mercedes. We know the front engine. You really have to enjoy that front engine layout, and then these guys are going to be able to see how that plays out. We did see, especially at Sebring, I remember it was very strong, late on the brakes. And right when you have the engine in the front, you can be a little bit more aggressive on turn in. However, yeah, I think you're right, John. They're just not as popular.
Yeah, not as popular. So I'm watching Sean Campbell. I have a sneaking suspicion that this might be the white flag lap for him, because I think he's trying to go for a little bit of a last lap here and see what sort of time he can work out there. A lot of rotation into the turn 12 and on the exit as well. Nearly spun it on the exit there. That would have presented a huge opportunity for Toomey. Sean Campbell actually slightly overdriving the car. Apologies for the viewers that can't see, because I'm looking on my screen right now as he comes through turn 15 and 16. And I think we may get just one more lap out of him. Time has not quite expired yet on this race, so he's going to go through for one more time. I think this might be white flag for him, though.
Yeah, I think it might be coming up here as we get down to it. I think that Randolph has solidified themselves as the winners here if they can maintain coming down to the end. And as you see, trying to chase down that Clemson, maybe a little bit of a gap closed from Embry-Riddle to that Clemson car that would be for position, but it's going to take a lot of driving in just 2 laps or so to get that taken care of.
Yeah, and Carl has not much to gain here by getting in front of either of these cars, just as Christian Gomez and Avery Walker's situation is, as Alex Jensen and Andrew Williams continue to battle over 13th and 14th position, heading through turns 12 and 13 right now. So yeah, a little further on up the field, Sean Campbell still maintaining that 9-second gap out in front to Thomas Toomey. So what an incredible job that Sean Campbell has done pretty much all race, I think, to save as much fuel as he had. I bet, I think I made that early prediction, Josh, that Sean had to push pretty hard and Toomey was able to save fuel. I think Sean was probably just managing that gap, not letting him get too close so they couldn't overtake, and just lifting and coasting and using that to save as much fuel as he could across the 25 or 30 laps or so that he completed before ultimately coming into the pit lane. So I think guys are going to watch that and take notes aggressively as to how to win a race around Hockenheim, especially when you're the only Ford in the field. I almost wish we had another one so we could compare, but unfortunately there is not the only Ford in the field. And Embry-Riddle slightly losing touch with Andrew Williams just up in front. Clemson probably going to be able to hang on to P13 at the end of the night.
Yeah, and I do see the flag man now waving that InnoVetted white flag for the leaders as they get across there. So the cars on your screen now are actually coming to that white flag, but our time here is limited, and we've run down kind of the front of the field as they were. And will there be time and room for a last lap lunge? Probably not from that long nose of that Mercedes. So I would expect these guys to hold key right here. But John, it has been exciting and intriguing to see how these guys have chosen their strategy. Again, Sean Campbell, we talked about just managing that gap almost on another level from these guys trying to maintain their equipment. And then trying to get some pace. We know that these guys